everyone. Welcome to a football podcast, episode 2 with myself, Christian Jack, and Stephen Caldwell. Today we are going to talk about Arsenal, Chelsea, Victor Vazquez, contract talks with Sebastian Giovinco and Jozy Altidore, and we sit down with TFC boss Greg Vanney. It is a pretty centric TFC episode. It is basically our TFC preview episode. And don't worry, Whitecaps fans, don't worry, Montreal fans, we're going to get to you and many other clubs before the start of the MLS season. But it has been a big news in Toronto FC land this week, so we've got to cover that. And it's great to be back with you again, pal.
Great to see you again, Christian. It's a pleasure to be here for our second episode.
And the first episode was universally beloved, I think, which was nice. So thank you for everybody for all the messages. It certainly meant a lot to us.
Yeah, I appreciated the support. We love doing it, and we're looking forward to really getting into it every single week. But again, thanks for the support all through the platforms. We really, really appreciate it.
We certainly do. And remember to continue to rate and review. We really appreciate that as well. And of course, the feedback has been great, and we love the interaction. We're going to get to some of your stuff later in the show. And remember, hashtag AskAFP. I have been on assignment a lot this weekend, including obviously interviewing a lot of players in MLS this week in Los Angeles, and we're going to have a lot of stories about that over the next few episodes as well, so that's good. But I am going to leave the match report stuff and the match review stuff to you guys, because when I didn't see it, I don't really want to comment on it, so I'll throw that over to you and our esteemed producer, Mr. Sean Kay.
Thanks, KJ. Quite a weekend in the Premier League, eh?
Yeah, big weekend, a lot of goals in the Premier League, and a lot of interesting games that looked like they were, going to be easy to predict, and then they were not quite went that way, and exciting action all round.
Let's start with our appetizer with Liverpool and Palace. 3 goals for Palace. At the start of the game, you didn't really expect it. It looked like 11 behind the ball and Liverpool trying to break through. But once that goal from Palace, it sort of opened up the game.
Yeah, it was an interesting game. I thought it was the first time in a number of months we saw Liverpool a little bit flat from the start, Sean. They looked like, they were devoid of ideas, devoid of any kind of real rhythm to their attacks or real impetus to the attacks, and Palace were in a lovely defensive position. They looked pretty comfortable, and then obviously when Townsend scored, it kind of woke them up a little bit, didn't it? It woke the crowd up too, and made everybody realise that after Palace's exploits against Manchester City at the Etihad recently, and obviously the last team to beat Liverpool in the league in April 2017, everyone's thinking, here we go, is there going to be another real shock on the cards here? So it then just sort of made the game way more interesting. The goals started coming in, but Palace were always in it. They were defending really well. I loved their shape. Thought Roy Hodgson had them set up brilliantly.
Yeah, to speak about Roy, do you think he looked at the starting 11 and when saw Milner out on the wing, he sort of salivated and said, Zaha, go out and get him?
Yeah, it looked like that, didn't it? Whenever he was isolated with James Milner, Zaha, using that trickery of his, took him down the line more often than not. I liked that. I thought Milner was, hoping to push him inside into the bodies, but Zaha was having none of it, and he is very two-footed. He kept taking him down the line. The first goal came from that, was Zaha, the little cut back to Andros Townsend, and a brilliant finish from him. And there was a few other instances that as soon as he moved it out of his feet, Milner didn't have the pace or the legs anymore to stay with them. It gets me to the point, they need Trent Alexander-Arnold back really, really quickly. James Milner's a terrific player, but to be isolated 1v1s against the quality of a Zaha is not his game anymore. Why did they let Nathaniel Clyne go on loan to Bournemouth? That was just maybe the worst decision Jurgen Klopp's made this season. There was no point to that, in my opinion. They should have kept him there for the cover, even if and when Gomez comes back. I don't love him in the right back area also, so maybe that was a bit of a misstep from Klopp, and he'll be wanting Alexander-Arnold back really, really quickly. But yeah, that was the key to the match, was how often could Palace get the ball on the counter-attack to Zaha to cause some damage. Milner going off in the latter stages with a red card was testament to how difficult his afternoon was.
So before this match, Liverpool had only given up 10 goals in the entire league, and then in this game, let's 3 in. Is this a one-off for Liverpool based on injuries, etc., or did Roy sort of show the league this is sort of how you counterattack Liverpool and almost get a result? Obviously, Liverpool won in the end, but still, 3 past Liverpool is very impressive.
Very impressive and very frustrating for Roy Hodgson. I'm sure that you go to Anfield, you score 3 goals, and you get nothing from the game. So he'll be mad at that. Great question. I don't really think that Palace showed teams how vulnerable Liverpool can be. I think they had an off day. The first goal was terrific. I loved how MacArthur looked like he was in a bit of a spot. Then he found a wonderful outlet pass to Van Aanholt on the left-hand side, and it really took 4 or 5 Liverpool players out of the game. And then, of course, getting the ball to Zaha was crucial to the resulting goal and the 1v1 with Milner. But that was clever. If teams are brave enough to sort of suck Liverpool in and allow them to feel like they can maybe nick the ball, once they break that press, it looked a little bit like Liverpool of old, didn't it? Where you can get in behind their midfield and their forward line and then get right onto their back four. But probably Jurgen Klopp learnt more from that than maybe any opposing team. It was an off day. The header goal from Tompkins, good from Palace's point of view, but shocking goal for a top side to lose. A little bit of a nice little block there. I think it was Ayew on Virgil van Dijk that really just kind of got him rooted. Normally Van Dijk eats up every ball that comes into the box. Nice little block there, and then Tompkins put it in the back of net. And the third goal was in the dying stages. Yeah. It was a sloppy goal to lose, but that one first goal is interesting. That to me is a key. The bravery to play out of that press takes incredible quality, and if you do it consistently, are they going to catch you and then score a goal of their own? So that's not an easy thing to do, but in that instance I thought Palace did it perfectly well.
We also saw Naby Keita get back in the squad for Liverpool.
Yeah.
He had a bit of an interesting game. There were some times where he looked really, really nice on the ball, made some nice 1-2s, but he also didn't fully gel with the Liverpool squad. What do you take from this match for Keita? Do you see a long-term future for him at this club?
I see a long-term future from him. I still think he's a quality player, but I don't think he's in their best 11 just now, and that was clear to see. And he looked a little bit rusty, didn't he? He just didn't quite have the cohesion, or the midfield didn't have the cohesion that we've expected in recent weeks. I thought it was lacking a bit of creativity. Shaqiri was missing in there. Maybe lost a little bit of industry, but just an off game for him. I don't want to criticise one player like Keita or anybody else. Fabinho wasn't on his usual game as well, and he's been brilliant in recent weeks and months. Just wasn't the game for him. But it's clear to me that they need some creativity in that midfield to really play at home most Premier League games, and Shaqiri is providing that just now. He's improved his game so much, not just on the ball. We always expect something brilliant from that left foot of his, but now you can trust him in a midfield role. And I think as we look forward, especially at home, especially against teams outside the top 6, Shaqiri will be in the team more often than not.
Perfect. Let's move to the main course. This one was a heck of a game to watch. Obviously, if you were an Arsenal fan, maybe not if you were a Chelsea fan. Arsenal put in a strong performance against a woeful Chelsea.
Yes.
I'm quoting a Stephen Caldwell tweet right now. It was at halftime, but still, I will still hold you to it.
Yep.
What did you think overall about the match?
Overall, one team wanted it more. That was clear to see. Arsenal right from the very start. I thought they did something quite interesting tactically that we've not really seen from Unai Emery's side, where it was more of a 4-4-2 diamond. They asked Herrera to play predominantly on the right. Guendouzi was predominantly on the left. Xhaka held that central defensive position in midfield, and Ramsey went on his Roman runs to provide support to a more central Aubameyang and Lacazette. And I think it's important to recognise that these two guys really seem to have a personal relationship, don't they? They seem to have a real like for each other. One of them at different times has been asked to play in a wide area because Emery normally likes a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 formation. They did that without any moaning and unselfish play from them. But when we see them get central, they look really dynamic. I think that was the best performance as a kind of tandem that I've seen from them, and credit to Emery for finding a way to allow them to play together. And let's keep an eye on that to see how often he can do that in the future. Maybe ideally that's going to be in a 3-5-2. I think possibly once he gets the right personnel in the defensive areas, I think he might go to that. He's flirted with that this season, but he doesn't really have the players to play at the moment, so he went back to a more solid 4 at the back at times. But a brilliant tandem from they two. Lacazette's first goal the first goal of the match, his only goal, was absolutely brilliant. He took it so well. It was a fizzed-in cross, 4 tremendous touches. The first one to control it, 2 brilliant touches with his left foot. Any kid watching, just the first left foot touch to take it away from the defender, then that critical second left foot touch to allow himself the space. I think it was my boys Will and Robbie that reminded me he's probably the best near post finisher in world football, isn't he? He hits that one so hard and so true into the near post, even a goalkeeper of Kepa Arrizabalaga's quality cannot get anywhere near it, and he blasts into net. A great goal, exactly what they deserved. A Chelsea side with no ideas, no cohesion to their attacks, no identity to anything that they were doing. Don't think they were that bad defensively, but when they were on the ball, Arsenal were just very comfortable and confident to allow them to have it. Pedro having the only real chance. I know Alonso hit the post from a corner, slack marking from Arsenal, but Pedro was the only time they got in behind Arsenal with any great quality, and he maybe should have put it in the back of the net, but disappointing from them, especially in the first half.
Yeah, to go back on the Lacazette and Aubameyang, they have 22 goals combined through the Premier League this year. And originally, when I first saw the goal, I thought the keeper should have done better, especially in the short side. But because he hit it so hard, I was like, okay, maybe not. But what are your thoughts on David Luiz on that? Do you think was the touch just so nice that he probably wasn't going to be able to get as tight as he wanted to, or do you think he was a little too relaxed on that situation? A
little too relaxed. It's often something we say with his defending, isn't it? He's just a bit too lax, and it's such a shame because I can't think of a better player on the ball as a centre half. He's absolutely tremendous. His playmaking ability from that position. He was the one that set up Pedro's opportunity with a brilliant ball. We spoke about him last week against Newcastle with 4, 5, 6 raking crossfield balls, left or right foot, steps into play. But defensively, it's like he can't be bothered. It's like it's secondary. And to me, as much as football's now about bringing it out from the back, it still has to be the primary concern of any defender to stop the ball going in your net, and I don't think Luiz puts enough importance on that, not taking anything away from Lacazette, but should have did a little bit better. The marking for Koscielny's goal also was awful from Chelsea as a team. They had a warning earlier where Kepa made a great save from Koscielny when he got the header on it. You know, you're squeezing up like that, Sean, when the ball goes back and you squeeze up, you've got to pick up bodies, or you've got to get your arm out to make sure that there's no runs coming in between the lines, and they didn't do that well at all. They just squeezed up, as individuals. The line was pretty solid in terms of, in line with each other, but allowing 3 or 4 Arsenal shirts to just run in between them is not good enough, and Koscielny's fortunate with the finish, but he deserved that fortune because he was there all alone, and an awful display from Chelsea.
So do you think this is something that was tactical, and was there tactical mismanagement, or are you going the same route as Sarri said in his press conference, where the team had a mental breakdown, lacked determination, and this team is very difficult to motivate? And he also believes that it was motivation over tactics. Do you think that it was a motivation thing, or was there tactics involved that sort of allowed this team to lose the game 2-0?
There's always tactics involved, but any game, any level in the world, first and foremost, you have to win personal battles. You have to be ready for what's to come, start the game positively, do what you're good at, whatever that is, win a header, run in a channel, hold the ball up, make a save, come for a cross, whatever your position is. You set a tone to a performance by how you attack the game, and that happens at every level of football. I've heard managers say it. I've been part of performances, teams that are good and bad at that. So I completely agree with Sarri. His side were not ready for the mental challenge of playing Arsenal at the Emirates. Arsenal were. They came out with a fervour, and aggression to the attacks and their play. They won the right to play football. It's amazing, but when you go out with that mindset, you actually pass the ball better. The tactics come together because you have that mindset. So I agree with them. I don't think they had the right mindset heading into the game. I don't think they were ready for the match. I thought that, like I said earlier, the Arsenal sort of diamond midfield was causing them trouble. I think they didn't expect the front two of Lacazette and Aubameyang to be as central as they were. And again, good tactical decision from Emery, understanding that Rudiger and Luiz can be a little bit slack at times. Alonso loves to get forward. He leaves spaces in that channel where Luis is not so keen to kind of run into, and it's kind of, I know it came from a wide cross, but it's sort of that channel where the Lacazette goal came from. So I think that before you even go into tactics in any game, you need to be mentally ready for it. And at that level of football, with the quality that they guys have, it's unforgivable not to be prepared and ready for the challenge.
So many times I've heard through interviews that the coach, the players, everyone things should keep between the four walls. And when a coach or a player leaves those four walls and goes publicly with the thing, how does that change the team mentality? How does it change the trust? Is it something that you can only do once or twice? And has he pulled the pin too early? What are your thoughts?
I loved it. I think Sarri's a man that doesn't take any prisoners. He's a guy that I respect. He looks like a guy that I'd love to have played for. I wished I had the opportunity to play under him. He's a man, isn't he? He doesn't mess around. He just tells people how it is. So I'm 99% certain I wasn't in that changing room that he told them the exact same things as he told the press and the world immediately after. Not good enough, look in a mirror, all the things we've heard a lot of times. The men in the dressing room go home and look in a mirror and think, was I good enough? Did I give my best? The other ones, the ones that he can't trust, probably blame the manager or want to moan about it or blame a fellow teammate. And the other ones that he wants out his football club. That's the reason for that very public scalding that he gave the side. So I've got no problem with that. I love the way he went about it as well, saying it in Italian. It sort of had more weight and meaning to it, didn't it? The way that he sort of said his brilliant little eloquent 20 seconds in English and then just went into this tirade in Italian. And I love it. And I think that Sarri's a guy who is adamant in the way that he wants to play. He will not accept any compromise in that. I love that. The best managers in the world are all like that. And at the moment, he probably doesn't have the personality or the quality of player that he would like to play that style. But for the long-term future of himself and Chelsea Football Club, he has to stick to that. He has to stay to his beliefs, the way that he wants football to be played. He loves 4-3-3. Everybody, including me, is calling for him to play Kante and Jorginho in that central area, but he won't waver from that. That's not how he plays. And a bit of a message to the board to probably say, help me find the players that can allow me to play the way that I want to play. I want players who are men. I want players who will stick to the technical and tactical beliefs that I have used throughout my entire career.
Who's the leader in that locker room? Like, obviously on the armband, it's Cahill. But when you look at that Chelsea squad, it doesn't look like a group, a team that's going to fight for each other. It just looks like 11 individuals. Who is the leader on that team?
Great question. Who stands up when things are tough? I don't see Luis as a leader, but I don't think he's a natural fit for that area, that position. Hazard essentially is the man of the team, but he's wore the armband for Belgium, isn't he? Probably sometimes for Chelsea, but he's not a leader. Jorginho looks like he's really struggling to come to terms with English football at the moment. He looked dejected on Saturday afternoon. I thought that he was just, he couldn't get any space. Ramsey was on top of him every time. Teams have worked him out, and he can't find a way to kind of get on the ball or to be effective for his side. Pedro has experience, but he's never been a leader. Could go on and on. Azpilicueta, I think he was wearing the armband, but I don't look at him and I see a quality player. I see a guy who does his job, but I don't see someone who can rally the troops. I don't see a John Terry who can stand up there, Sean, and say, after 5 or 10 minutes, wait a sec, what is going on here? Call a few people out, tuck a few guys in, get back into a bit of an identity, a bit of a shape, and then build from there. That's what you have to do. Not every game is pretty. Not every game goes well. You need a guy to say, right, I'm going to change this on the park for the manager. I'm going to bring guys in. I'm going to make things a little bit tighter. I'm going to call a couple of people out. We're going to start from the basics. We're going to find a foothold in this game, and then we're going to expand from there. And nobody really did that on Saturday, and the game was over by half time, and Arsenal just sat in the second half, allowed Chelsea to have the ball, but they had won the mental battle by that point.
Yeah, they don't look like the champions that they were 2 years ago. So
no, we keep seeing a champion team then just kind of down tools and stop performing for their manager, and that's why we go there immediately, because history tells us that group of players have done that. The bulk of that group of players, Jorginho wasn't there and Kovacic wasn't there, but the bulk of that group have been there, and they go from the highs of winning a Premier League, which is not an easy thing to do. You have to be of a certain level mentally and technically to get anywhere near that, and then to drop to some of the lows that we've seen from their players is unacceptable. And it's happened through, this will be the third manager that we seem to see the same characteristics coming from. So good on Sarri for calling them out. Now it's up to the ownership, the leadership, the board of directors at Chelsea Football Club to stick by Sarri, get him who he wants, get the guys out that he feels are a bad influence within the squad, and allow him to build a team, give him some time to build the right kind of characters that he wants at the football club.
And now moving forward, last week, we'll just throw a little bit of dessert before we wrap this up. But last week you proclaimed your hipster team, Wolves.
Yes.
And good God, did they perform on the offense this weekend. Just give us a little bit of a taste on what you thought of the Wolves-Leicester match.
Exciting match. I thought it was uncharacteristic of a Premier League game. It was very stretched, way too stretched for Leicester and Claude Puel's point of view, I'm sure, but an entertaining game, some good performances all round. I thought that obviously Jota with a hat-trick was tremendous, played really well, put the ball away when he gets into the position. He normally has composure in his finish, and I thought that credit to Wolves for never giving up after being in a 2-0 lead at home. Once you've drawn back to 2-2, it's easy to panic and become anxious. Another sign that Nuno Santo just has these players playing the way that he wants them. He's given them confidence, he's given them belief to go out there and do their job. So great character to come back 3-2, 3-3, and then still to win the game. It sounds like it's an easy thing to do at home, but it's not. Like, I promise you get very anxious when you've let a 2-goal lead at home slip, but they never let themselves get too down about that. From Leicester's point of view, at the end, sorry for laughing, but I just felt for Claude Puel. I saw a man that just wanted to put his head through a window. I thought, who would be a manager? The dejection on his face. He went into Molineux. His team scored 3 goals. They've came back from 2 down, 3-2 down, and they're going to pick up a very good point. They showed glimpses of really great football at times, and that 4th goal was just awful, wasn't it? Johnny Evans, who came on as substitute, left his leg dangling. I thought that was poor defending from Johnny. We normally expect better than that. And then, the giveaway that put them in that predicament. Jota was in an offside position, but the second phase allowed them to be a good 5-6 yards ahead of Wes Morgan. And the guy was just dejected, and I can see why. There's something not quite right there. We hear so often that Puel doesn't have the confidence of the players, and I feel like that might be the case. I hate to say it. We've seen them fight back, and then we think, oh, well, okay, these guys are still fighting, but with the quality that they have, they probably should be a little better than they're doing right now. So let's keep an eye on that one. I'm not sure that Puel's going to last the season.
Crazy.
Yeah.
If you are a defender on a team that just won 4-3 and you let up 3 goals, are you still going into the locker room with a smile on your face, or are you kicking yourself?
I think 3 points is the most important thing, especially after a game. I think I would focus on the positives. I think that Connor Cody, one of my favourite players this season, maybe at fault. I know it was a deflection, but he deflected one of the goals into the back of the net, and then his defence was a little bit disjointed. But he's been a great leader for that team, and I think he probably goes in. I would go to the positives first. I would say, great, we came back, we showed spirit, we kept going, we win the 3 points. But then once you get home for the weekend, you come in on the Monday or the Tuesday morning, you say, look, there was a couple of areas where we were kind of disjointed and pulled apart a little bit. So I think they'll be working on that this week. They're a great team to watch, Wolves. We've got so many exciting players. Jota with a hat-trick. Costa's been brilliant for him. He's been kind of in and out. Traore has pace. He can be exciting at times. Jimenez has been great up top with the work rate. Moutinho's playing in a more advanced position now. Set up that first Jota goal and indeed the second goal from Bennett with a corner kick, and he's been a brilliant addition through his experience and his quality. Neves is one of the best young players in Europe. Been great for them. Could go on and on. Nuno Santo's got something really good going there, and if I'm a Wolves fan, I just hope that they keep their players and they build on it rather than having to sell 2 or 3 of them and losing 2 or 3 of them in the summer.
Of course. All we know is that this was a hell of a weekend.
Great weekend.
It was a joy to watch, and I'm hoping that KJ has to work a few more weekends so I can keep my eye on it and keep the wife at bay.
Great.
But yeah, that's the roundup from this weekend.
Good stuff, fellas. A reminder to everybody out there for our episode 3, because next weekend is the FA Cup. There are some big games, but there are also some enormous games a couple of days later on the Tuesday of the Premier League. So we will be extending our deadline for the episode 3 to the Tuesday, I believe, that week. So I think that's the 29th, Shawnee, of January that time. So episode 3 will be coming out on the Tuesday that week rather than the Monday, so we can get some real meat into some of the big Premier League stories as that race continues. But that was fun. Shawnee, over to you for headlines.
Yep. Before we get into Toronto FC, let's hit some European headlines. Sven Mislintat sounds like he's on his way out of Arsenal after falling out with Emery. We sort of touched about it last episode about the mismanagement of Rambo. What's going on here, guys? What do you guys think? Is Arsenal a full-on mess?
Yeah, a little bit of a mess. We were just talking off camera about our friend, shout out to Devang Desai, who, to be frank, could be having a heart attack and a meltdown if Arsenal was 1 point behind in the Premier League race right now, but they're not. This is far from ideal because of the timing, Stephen. Obviously, around the transfer window, Mislintat was seen as one of those new leaders of the football club, wasn't he? Post Wenger, obviously was there while Wenger was there, but brought him from Dortmund. Conducted a number of transfers. Maybe this is a power move for Emery, but I know on Twitter, where often you can just watch bonfires exist with Arsenal fans all over the world, this has not gone down well, and it's far from ideal at the moment.
It's not ideal. I think it's disappointing to see a guy like Mislintat leave the football club so quickly into his tenure. He's, a head of recruitment of quality, director of football, technical director, whatever you want to call it. He's a guy with a past record and has proven he has the quality to do it. I think you hit the nail on the head there, KJ. This is a real, war between Emery and Mislintat, in my opinion. There's a difference of opinion on players. There's a difference of opinion on who is essentially in charge and what direction the football club should go. And so I think that that's the reason that Mislintat's going to be on his way out. He's decided enough's enough. He's maybe doesn't feel like he has enough power with the higher ups. Raul Sanllehi is obviously involved there big time at the football club, and I feel like he's edged towards the Emery side of things. There's a lot of rumours that Denis Suarez coming in on loan from Barcelona with a view to maybe a £20 million move in the summer was the reason for that. Mislintat didn't feel he was a player that would have really strengthened Arsenal, but Emery was very sure that he was. So it's a shame. It's disappointing. Arsenal looked like they were getting things on track. They still need recruitment. They still need players. Ironically, this is the area that they look to be changing, but they were in the right direction with Emery after what was a long tenure of Arsene Wenger, and they had really sort of transitioned well, and I felt like the future was very bright, and this throws that up in the air a little bit.
It certainly does, for a number of factors, because it is clear that Emery wants to spend money and isn't worried about telling you that he wants to spend money, which is very different, which we've often talked about on the TV side of things, where Wenger was maybe a bone of contention for many Arsenal fans, but kept it in-house. Obviously, what was going on in the boardroom stayed in the boardroom when Wenger was there. I think there's a leader of the football club, they could rely on Arsene Wenger for that, and that's, let's be frank, one of the many reasons why he stayed in the job. Not to discredit some of his performances, but they were nowhere near the level they should have been in the latter years. But that, I think certainly appeased ownership at that point, and Emery's not necessarily doing that. He's challenging them in that. And the last few major decisions that that they've made. We talked about Ramsey last week, the Ozil deal, the Mkhitaryan swap from Sanchez. People would say that's not a bad swap to get a player of £50 million quality, I suppose, for something that you're going to get for nothing. But you can also turn that around and say, well, he's not been anywhere near good enough, and you could have put that money somewhere else into the transfer fee and wages of another player. So a lot of things to be concerned about, Sean, with that football club at the moment. And I guess it's one of those watch this space, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that same thing that we always see in English football, isn't it, KJ? We never really feel that there's a connection between the manager, the head coach, and a director of football. It's always been a problem, and you felt like with foreign guys at the helm that it would have been okay this time, but it just shows you that it's all a difference of opinion. Football's such a game of opinions that these two guys have clashed on a few players. I think Mkhitaryan may be another example where, there was a loyalty from Dortmund, wasn't there? And Mislintat was sure to bring him in. He's came in, it's not really worked. Somehow Unai Emery's lost his trust in Mislintat. There's been a little bit of a power struggle and a political battle there, and it looks like Unai Emery's won that in the short term with the board and the higher ups.
Moving on to Scotland, Timothy Weah signed on loan to Celtic. Jermaine Defoe signs on loan for 18 months to Rangers. How will both fare in the Scottish Premier League, and who's going to score more?
Wow, good question. I think it's interesting that Celtic have gone younger and Rangers have gone older.
Yeah.
I mentioned that a little bit before the show in terms of what was going in that direction. Weah's a very exciting prospect. I would hope that he will be given that opportunity. Defoe, a player you know really well. I've covered him a lot, but you played with him, and you have to say that this is probably his last hurrah in terms of playing in a major league in Europe, and 18 months left in his contract. They've taken on that final bill in terms of off Bournemouth's wages, where he was getting paid a lot of money. You still believe, I think, that he could probably score at that level?
I do, KJ, and I think that it's a football club that really suits Jermaine. He likes to be at big clubs. He likes to be the main man. I think he responds to that. I think, going on when he left Toronto FC and went back to Sunderland and really embraced what it meant to play for Sunderland. The fans loved him, and you can see from his performances he gets a great deal of energy from that. Bournemouth was a club he played for earlier in his career, but for whatever reason it didn't work out when he went back there. I think maybe the style of play didn't suit him. He then started to pick up some injuries again, which was disappointing for him, and he's on a vast sum of money, so he's going to have to score goals. He's going to have to prove Steven Gerrard's loyalty and faith in him really quickly, because they're in a fight for this title, and whether you think it or not, they're there at the turn of the year, and that's absolutely crucially important. I think the additions that they made in Stephen Davies and the Northern Ireland International and Jermaine Defoe were really smart from Rangers. I think they're two players that can really get the football club quickly, can bring real value. And then on the other side of things, Celtic go young and exciting, but guys that might need time.
Yeah.
So I think let's keep an eye on that. Timothy Weah obviously has a very bright future in the game, but it's not easy to go to Scotland and get up and running really quickly. It's a physical league. He's going to have to adapt to that. He's probably not been used to that kind of football anywhere at any part of his growing up or in his early professional career. So I'm liking the Defoe one, I have to say. I think that if he can stay fit, he will score goals for Rangers. I've always believed he'll score goals anywhere he would ever go, KJ.
Yeah, you mentioned physically. The one thing I would say is that I don't think that he was trusted by Eddie Howe, because what he has in King and Wilson is physicality. Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see. Everywhere he's gone, we have this vision of Jermaine Defoe scoring goals. It's just what he does. But I think it might surprise him a little bit. You know better than most about what that league can be. He's not just going to be able to go up there and swan around like on a pension, is he? Because he's barely played first-team football for a year and a half.
Yeah, I just don't expect Steven Gerrard to ask him to do the kind of role that Eddie Howe wants from his forwards. We see Wilson and King every single week running channels and doing pretty much every part of the game. They have such energy as strikers. I think it'll be a case, you stay up top, you get between the posts and you finish our chances. When Jermaine gets that scenario, he's a very good striker. He's not a guy that wants to run around. I'd even say, and no disrespect to him at Toronto FC, he didn't want to run around then, and that was a good few years ago now. So if you're asking for the wrong type of role from Jermaine, I don't think he's capable of doing that. He doesn't have the agility of earlier years. But if you tell him just to stay in the box, we'll get the ball to you, don't worry about tracking back, don't worry about running channels, we'll get other guys to do that, we've got other runners in the team, We just expect you to finish the chances. He'll do that, and I believe he'll do that till the day he retires. And so, in that sense, I think Stevie will get him and will ask for the best out of him.
Funny that we're moving from Defoe onto our TFC preview 4 years later.
All comes together.
Obviously, this week, Victor Vazquez leaves Toronto FC on transfer. The sentiment on Twitter is fans are unhappy about this move, but this is good business, right?
Yeah, I think from a club point of view, it is good business, and Stevie maybe touch on that because I know that we did that for TSN this week. As a fan, I would be very disappointed because as a fan, one, you don't really care about business immediately because you can't, for example, know exactly right away what they're going to do with that money, right away. So it's not like, okay, well, Victor Vazquez is gone. We've got $500,000 on a transfer fee, and we've now spent it on this guy, and we're going to buy this guy to replace him. So the whole evolution of the entire process is not complete. So it's very difficult for a fan to evaluate that rationally anyway, let alone fans evaluating anything rationally is very difficult. So there you go. You got two reasons why right away. And it was a bargain, Victor Vazquez. So from a business point of view, everything that we said is right. But as a player and his output on the field and what he was able to bring to that football club was one of the pivotal reasons why they were able to get over the hump. Why they were, when they went as far as they went the first time and they couldn't quite deliver it, the one knock on them was, okay, they need that extra player. They need that extra creativity, that manufacture of play through midfield and that vision of pass, the speed of thought that Jozy and Seba require. And then when they brought him, you could just see how difficult it was for opposition to line up against them because you had something else to think about. So I think he'll be significantly missed. Of course, the business side of things is very different, but on the field, I think he'll be very much missed.
First of all, one of the greatest foreign players to ever play in the MLS, one of the best creative players in the history of MLS. Victor Vazquez was a magnificent signing by Toronto FC. For me, he was player of the season in 2017 when TFC went on to win MLS Cup. I thought he brought that missing factor that was spoken about in the 2 or 3 years before, where TFC were getting closer and needed that extra piece to get the ball to Giovinco and Altidore to provide that touch of class when it really mattered most. And we talked about it at length in Lifetime, and we could go back through the games where he provided just that one little weighted pass or turn or moment of class when it absolutely mattered. Second of all, great business from TFC. I have to say, take away the emotion out of the game. This guy's on his way down. He's lost his best football. I hate saying it. A brilliant character and a great professional, but his knee means that he can't train 2 days in a row. His back was failing him. He couldn't get out in the field enough, and so the money that he was on, TFC gave him that contract, it has to be said, through loyalty from what he provided in 2017, was too much for what the output was going to be, and I believe that output will drop significantly as the years go on in Victor Vazquez's career. So I think it was brilliant from TFC to move him on to get some money back from him. I think it was really classy of Greg Vanney yesterday, knowing the backlash they were going to receive, not to take a pop at Victor Vazquez, to praise him, talk about all his strengths as a person and as a football player, and to almost accept the flack that was going to come their way, because I think it would have been easy for them to maybe throw some bullets and say, well, talk about that knee and the fact that he can't train as much, and talk about some things about the physical side to Victor Vazquez in his game at this point. But they stayed away from that, and I commend them on that. Third of all, your recruitment has to be good.
Yes.
Because if you're even going to come somewhat close to replacing a guy like that, you need to have scoured South America and Europe and elsewhere to know where that type of player is. Now, you're not going to get the same guy as Victor Vazquez, even for $1.5 million, in my opinion. But can you get a young, exciting player? I think it might be a wide guy, KJ. Maybe we'll get to that more in a minute as we dive into TFC. But I'm not certain it's going to be a number 10 in the same kind of mould as Victor Vazquez. But someone who can provide real quality when it matters as an asset, a lot like Atlanta United have done, where you can develop and improve and sort of give this asset a platform to maybe make some money from him in the future, or make him a DP in the short-term future.
Yeah, two other things for me on Vazquez before we put the final touches to his career at TFC is that, one, I didn't share a locker room with him, but I've spoke to many people who did, and I've spent enough time in his presence to know that he was a genuinely good guy.
Class guy, which is important and will be a big miss, by the way, in that locker room, because Victor was one, I think it's clear, we're not pulling back the curtain, it's obvious. He wasn't a rah-rah guy, but he led by example, and those guys are very important, particularly in this dressing room. So the other thing I would say is, and this is not TFC's responsibility, but I think we have to remember that we're in 2019 in Canada and the game is still finding many people. And Victor Vazquez showed something to people live in Toronto and across North America that many people have never seen. And that was the vision. And that was a player that would make people smile and go, wow, this is like watching a Champions League, UEFA Champions League caliber player. And you get that with Seba, but it doesn't get talked enough about sometimes. But it was that wow factor. It wasn't always there, but it was that pass that no one else could see, that I would be down there on the sidelines and I would see the opposition coach or even Greg Vanney and his team go, look at each other and go, never, you can't teach that stuff. No. And that has to be talked about because they are still entertainers. Yeah. And that's why people pay a lot of money to go watch this team. And that was one of the reasons why, because of that and that improvisation that you don't know what you're going to see. And that's why we're drawn to high-level sports. Yeah, a wonderful player. One of the best 5 or 10 players I ever watched in my life, KJ. I think when you see a guy sort of so above the level in terms of how he sees things, how he moves, the vision of pass, the weight of pass, every part of his game, it's you sort of stand back, don't you? And you're a little bit in awe, your eyes open up. And I put Victor in that category. I remember a guy called Lubo Moravcic came to Celtic way back in the late 90s, and it was the same kind of thing, 2-footed, could do just about everything. And I had the pleasure of watching him when I was a young lad back in Scotland. And Victor was that to MLS, he was that to a City and Toronto FC, and I think his legacy will be there forever. I don't like seeing good people leave this city. No. I don't like seeing good people leave the football club. We lost a great one in Benoit Giroud just recently, who was starting his coaching career at Toronto FC. I believe he should have been, Bill Manning should have been hanging onto his leg as he was going to the airport to not allow him to leave, to go back home, because we can't allow people like that to leave Canada and to go back home or try something elsewhere and maybe make a home in the Middle East. We want them to stay here because we need their experience and what they bring to help develop our academy and our first team and indeed soccer in general in Canada.
The football industry that Victor Montagliati was talking about last week on our show.
Find a place for him somewhere. So in that regard, I'm extremely sad. I'm sad for the country of Canada. I'm sad for the city of Toronto, but I can understand Victor still, feeling he has some football left, wanting that substantial payday that's going to come in Qatar. Let's be honest, he was underpaid in Toronto. He's going to get overpaid now in Qatar.
He'll be all right.
He deserves it.
He'll be doing all right for himself. He's not living in a caravan, lads.
No, and he deserves it. But I think from a purely football point of view, it was brilliant business from TFC.
Earlier this week, Christian made a little bit of headlines with our dear friends Jozy Altidore and Sebastian Giovinco. If you haven't seen it yet, go to tsn.ca and give it a watch. There's going to be a lot of news this year about their contracts and sort of the situation. They've both stated they want to be here. Is this going to be a story all year long, and how is this going to end?
Wow. Yeah, I think it will be a story all year long because from what I know and from what I'm hearing, they're not close at the moment, and if this drags on into the season, it's going to be a story that the media, quite rightly, are going to follow. They're going to follow the bouncing ball, and wherever it lands, they're going to go after it. And people would say, why would you do that? Well, at the end of the day, there's the fans out there that want to know. They want to know what's going on here. So, look, there's so many layers we can get into in this, and this is a TFC pod, and we've got the time to do it. So let's get into it, Stevie, in terms of the depth of what we should talk about here. If we were running the club and GM and assistant GM, you and I often have these discussions anyway about what we would do with these players. I think it's clear right now that what the facts we know, let's go through the facts before we present the rest of the case. They both want to stay. Greg Vanney publicly has said he wants them to stay. Now, it's one thing to wanting this all to happen, then it comes down to what is the value? What are the value that those players see and their representatives see going forward, and what they should be, and what do the club see going forward? But I do think it's important to note that Greg Vanney, as the spokesman of the club, has said in some regard that he wants them to stay. So it's not as if, like, thanks for everything, guys, we're going to run down your contracts and then going to go. So there is somewhere there for a wiggle room. Yeah,
I don't think Greg Vanney can publicly say that. So I think he's been a little bit coy and a little bit smart. The output that Sebastian and Jozy have given TFC means that Greg Vanney essentially has to say that. They've been brilliant players for TFC. They're going to be remembered forever and ever for what they've given to the football club, what they've brought in terms of trophies. So it doesn't surprise me that he's playing that card. It's clear that the football club, on the other hand, are unsure about whether they want these 2 or 3 guys to stay beyond their contracts. And the reason for that, first and foremost, is money. They get paid incredible sums of money. They get paid so much money that I think it's hard for TFC to make profit from the football and the winning and the revenue that comes through TFC and MLS. So I think that all comes into it. I think this is a business decision rather than an emotional decision. I'm not certain that it's possible for the 3 of them to say. I know for a fact they can't stay on the money that they're on.
Right.
So it's a question of, are these guys willing to maybe come down a little bit? And I'm thinking more of Sebastian and Michael in that regard, just because of the age that they're at, to stay at the club maybe for a bit more term years on the contract. Jozy less so because he's a bit more of a prime age. And do they really want them to be there, or do they want to move in another direction? I think it's fair to say that Greg Vanney, if you really asked him honestly, does he want to play 2 forwards? I think he would say no.
Yeah.
But you can't possibly leave Jozy Altidore or Sebastian Giovinco in the bench. That would be madness. So Greg Vanney, with his quality of coaching and adjusting his tactics, has found a way to bring success through playing the 2 of them in the field. But it's not really what he wants to see. So when he's been gifted the opportunity to maybe lose one of them and change a style, does he take that, or does he feel the weight of peer pressure and fan power by everyone seeming like they want the 2 guys to stay, by again compromising and finding a formation and a way of playing and contracts for both of them, so they're going to see past this year of 2019?
Yeah, I like you think that he would prefer to have more flexibility tactically. I think it's important for us to note that we have had long discussions with Greg, and he has never actually come out and told me that he would prefer to have, or you, that he would prefer to have only one of these and another playmaker or something.
Never once. Never even came close to it.
Not close to that. But I think it's also important to note that if you remove one of them and you do say, okay, keep one of them, is that player good enough without the other one? Because we can't talk about Michael here because he hasn't publicly said anything. We're going to get to him in a second. But let's just talk about these 2 as a case study right now, because they are a duo. And what they've accomplished together over the last 4 years is, as you said, quite remarkable. They're almost, I think, 140 goals combined. And they clearly get on, and they clearly make each other better, which is a team sport. It is not an individual sport. So I think we have to, as evaluators of talent, think about them as a package, do we not?
Yeah.
And then the other thing we have to think about is this. Let's think about 2020. So you've got one player in Giovinco who will be going into his... I always think about the age they played during that year. So he'll be 33 in the 2020 season, and Jozy will be 30. So they're not 36, 37. So then if you are not willing to pay them what they believe are worth, how do you replace these players? Okay, now everything we hear about acquisitions and recruitment, and we speak to a lot of people across MLS, one of the major things is, can they adapt to MLS? Well, these guys, you don't know if you're going to pay them again. You don't need to worry about them adapting to MLS, and you don't need to worry about paying transfer fees. Now, I'm just presenting the case, because if you are wanting to compete with Atlanta United, by the way, who are spending $15 million on transfer fees, and okay, people would say you're going to make a lot of money on Almiron, that's not efficient, and they're going to spend extortionate, just give them 5 years to Joseph Martinez. Do you, 1, believe in your recruitment policy that you can go out there and get those players? And 2, are you willing to go there and spend that amount of money? Because if not, then we're having a whole new different discussion, because maybe you're not aiming to be the best in MLS. Do you know where I'm going here?
Yeah, I
in
do.
terms of that? So they've accomplished what they've accomplished over the last 4 years, and they've taken TFC to a level that was beyond fantasy when they first arrived. They accomplished as much as they could ever accomplish. And you have them now there wanting to play for you. And I understand that people would say, okay, they've got to take a significant drop of money. But their case would be, I would imagine, hang on, what about the replacement cost? And I think that's worth talking about.
It certainly is, and it depends what your kind of model at the football club is, doesn't it? And I think that we've never really heard Bill Manning or anyone at TFC come out and talk in the way that we hear Atlanta United talk about, sort of developing these young, exciting South Americans. Almiron's a tremendous example, but maybe we could take Barco, and I know he's still extremely young, but what did they spend $10 million on him? And in the end, the last 10, 12 games, he wasn't getting selected, you know. So you can get it wrong as well, and I'm not immediately putting Barco saying, he's a flop, because he's still got time, and I still believe he has enough talent. But the way that Atlanta United set up their football club is to bring in these young guys, spend a few million on them, give them some significant money, but then look to move them on. And I don't think TFC think the same, but I think TFC are trying to restructure the wage bill and the shape of that, and the fact that it's far and away above anyone else within MLS, and create a system that's a little bit more streamlined or cost effective to still try and achieve success.
Right.
Not an easy thing to do.
Not easy at all.
Not an easy thing to do. Recruitment has to be perfect, and that's hard for anybody, So to me, unless you're really ploughing money into that recruitment, that access to South America, to Europe, and beyond, and unless you're really not just putting the money into your academy, but finding ways to help fix the system, to help develop and find the right competition for these young lads, to then have them ready to play at that level and to give that output to make yourselves contenders for MLS Cup, i.e. the quality of a Martinez or an Almiron or a Barco, then you've got a big problem. You need to spend the $8 million a year, the $5 million a year, the $6 million to keep the guys at the club. So it's fascinating to me, KJ.
Me too.
It really is, and I think it's still a lot of people probably on the fence within that, front office of the football club, what direction they should go, if these guys are worth it, and they feel like that's the way forward, or if it's a time for a change and they're ready with the next system and a different way of thinking.
It's fascinating to me for that reason, but also because it's uncharted territory for both sides. Because you've got these players who are getting paid a lot of money, and you maybe argue they wouldn't get paid that money anywhere else. But you've got a club who didn't have to pay a lot of money in transfer fees for either of them. So they were kind of gifted them, and obviously we're giving them wonderful a living in terms of their wages. But as I said before, the replacement cost, what does that come down to? And the other thing is the reputation of the club right now, I believe, hasn't been universally affected by the 2018 disaster. But we could be having another conversation in 6 months where if 2019 is duplicate for 2018, suddenly they're back to where they were when the bloody big deal bus fell off the highway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And suddenly you're going, hang on a minute, we might need to make a decision here. That are these the guys for the reasons why we're fine, or do we need to keep them to send our message going forward? Because if things don't go well in 2019, and then you get your recruitment wrong again. By the way, 2016 and 17 are an aberration for a failing football club.
Yeah.
Right now, they're considered a giant amongst MLS for the amount of money they're putting out there and for what they accomplished in 2017 as a record-setting year, and they should be. And that reputation is precarious because of the history, and they've got to protect it, have they not? And that's why this is very important. This is a very important moment in the club's history, what they decide to do here. Yeah,
I agree with you. Protect it or transition, though, I would say. And that's what I think, that we said the word fascinating, that makes it so fascinating, because I think from above, and I'm talking about the parent company and Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, I think they want more of a sustained period of success without an input of $23-24 million a year. I think they want
a proper business model.
Yeah, a system, a way of doing something. So to me, the transition is more likely than just opening the checkbook again and writing 3 checks to 3 tremendous servants and 3 guys that have achieved great success. But maybe the Vazquez thing's a little indication of the changing mindset of TFC, because they've shown no emotion with Victor Vazquez. They've said, okay, thank you, a sensational year and a good second year, and you're off, you're gone. Is it going to be the same case with the 3 guys, or is it going to be 1 or 2 of the guys? Off you go, thanks for your output, we're moving in another direction? Or is it going to be panic stations and we can't afford to lose these guys, they've gave us too much, let's sign 3 more checks?
One last headline before we move to the interview with Greg Vanney. We sort of mentioned it in the last one, but Michael Bradley is that 3rd contract that's up for grabs. Obviously, he wasn't at training this week. He's with the U.S. team. But do you expect the story to be similar with Michael, or sort of a little bit less because he's a little less vocal in sort of contracts and such?
Probably the latter.
Yeah.
I would think. The latter I would go with, because as much as I think Michael would want to stay as well, just as much as the other 2, I just think they might be dealt with a little bit differently. I also think there's an option on Michael and Seba's deals for 2020, a club option. So the Jozy thing is precarious more than theirs, because I think I'm right in thinking that they have club options for 2020 that the club can keep going if they want. So it's less as an emergency. The Jozy thing involves Seba because they, like I said before, they're just seen as a package. While Michael's a little bit more isolated, I think, in people the way that they view them.
Yeah, I agree, KJ. I think Michael's a different character. He's the captain of the football club. He has a different way of conducting himself, maybe a little bit less emotional than a Seba, and a little bit more experienced than Jozy, but in a different position. Jozy's 29, 30-year-old, he's right at that prime. He's due another.
I thought he handled it with class, though, Jozy.
He was class. He was absolutely class. Your interview with Seba and Jozy was brilliant, and it goes to show the kind of relationship that you have with them, because you got more out of them than anybody else. And then we saw him turn up the next day to the scrum, and he was very measured, very controlled. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he said the right things.
I agree.
About the
Very,
fans,
very
and about
intelligent,
the city,
mature, yeah.
and the football club, and I think all of that's absolutely genuine. But that was smart to say these things, playing on the emotional side, but saying it with such control and calmness. I thought was really great from Jozy. With Michael, I just don't see him leaving TFC. I see him staying. I don't know if he's going to get paid the same money that he's on, but I just don't see TFC losing Michael Bradley. I guess that depends on how much football he feels he has left in him, who's willing to pay him what, and really going to deeply test the love that he has for this football club in this city, because to me, he's a guy that could be at TFC for a long time. He could be go beyond his playing career into a coaching role, eventually into whatever role that he wants, head coach or general manager. I see him is thinking long term like that, but that's going to be tested as we head towards the end of 2019.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to pick up on something you said earlier. I could probably say this a little bit more than you, because you're part of this. The football club and the fabric of the football club, they have to protect the alumni of the club better, and they have to establish some kind of ability and connection consistently with the alumni of the club, and and I'm talking about current players as well, and how you treat those players. And this is something that I think has gone on at a level of sports management to another level over the last 10 or 15 years. There's a guy called Steve Waugh, who was the Australian captain in cricket, who brought this to the fore. And now when you see sportsmen all over the world, cricket is a leader in this, but they've all got a little number on their shirt. And Steve Waugh started that. And it's in rugby now, it's in cricket, it's in a number of sports around the world. And that number belongs to that club and that player. And it's not the number on the back, it's the number on the front. And that is forever associated with them. And that's something that I think TFC needs to start. And that is, the first player that played for the club is number 1. And you go on and you become that number. So I don't know what this number is, but Stephen Caldwell could be number 126 and forever will be known as 126 on everything that he wears if he represents that club. And I think that's a really important thing that this MLS as a whole needs to get better at. They're still in this growth period right now, evolving and going forward. But as you evolve and you move up and you grow, you have to remember where you came from. And I think that's important going forward. And that's why Michael, Stephen Caldwell, Jozy Also, Sebastian Giovinco, Victor Vazquez, Benoit Cheyrou consistently, Dwayne De Rosario, many others. I think it's very important that we look at them as consistent members of Toronto FC, and how you finish those relationships and how you continue to sustain them.
All right, delighted to be joined by Toronto FC boss Greg Vanney. Welcome to the podcast. It's been a longer off-season for you, and before we get to some of the players and some of the bigger news, I think a lot of our listeners would love to hear about your trip to Europe. We've talked about it a little bit off the microphone, but you said to me when I met with you in Orlando how you had a chance to go and see some, I won't say them, I want you to talk about them, some really big teams and how much you enjoyed that, and also I'm sure your mind was consistently ticking and learning as well.
Yeah, it was. I had 2 trips to Europe. The first one, I went over to France. Had the opportunity to watch Lyon and Man City play. After that, we met with some officials, club officials at Lyon, just to talk. One of the sporting directors there was a former teammate of mine, so we were able to get around the club a little bit and talk. They're obviously a great club at getting results, but also in producing talent that moves on to big clubs. So it's always nice to hear a little bit about what they're doing. Watching a game like Man City and Lyon was fantastic. Just again, it was Man City, the way they play, it's unique, and it's always interesting to be at a little bit higher level and in the stadium where you can see all the pieces moving and, in this sort of symphony on the field. And on the day, I have to say that Lyon was every bit as good and should have probably got the result. They had an excellent midfield, 2 young players in midfield who were fantastic on the day, and I thought really, set the tone. But it was great to watch them. Then we went over, trained to Paris and watched PSG Liverpool, which was, PSG was playing for their season in Champions League, and so it was just a different level of intensity and a different level of not taking risk, because especially in a game when your season is on the line or your Champions League season is on the line. So it was, an entertaining game, a little bit different than the game we saw the night before, but again, interesting to watch 2 teams go at it, and obviously seeing Neymar live is always a special moment. That was it. And then the second trip I took with my kids, which was amazing, and they haven't been out of the country, and we took them over to Liverpool, Man City, and went to 2 Man City games, and then we went to Liverpool, Man United. Great. And again, I saw now Man City 3 times this offseason, so again, I think it's a special thing to watch how they go about their business and a Pep Guardiola team, and seeing them live, and again, a symphony of movement without the ball and keeping possession. It's just a unique thing.
And one of the things that City do better than most is wide play, isn't it? And you and I have had a chat this off-season about wide play, and I'm sure our listeners will be fascinated to see where you see the game now, Greg, at the highest level, and where that translates in MLS, and where even it translates to how you want to see some of the identity of your club in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the game has always been and will forever be a sort of an action-reaction, and with Man City, they are a team that wants to have the ball. That's their style. That's their what they do, and so obviously they use wide play as an important aspect of that. They try to stretch out the back line as much as they can. They have great wingers who are dangerous and are always threatening the space behind with and without the ball, and their ability to open up the width of the field high gives the gaps in the pockets for their 2 attacking midfielders that are essentially functioning, and that's these roles in between lines. What's interesting in watching them is how, because they're playing against teams that love to play them on the counter, is how they protect themselves against the transition. And that's something I was paying close attention to, how they really don't stretch themselves out in the setup phase, how they actually stay pretty narrow in the build-up, but they keep the width ahead of the game. And that's in order to control the game channel and protect themselves as they are in possession. And if a transition takes place, they're able to control that space between the ball and the goal. So it's really interesting, and everybody chooses their style of play and their way of doing things, and it's how you connect the dots when you have the ball, when you don't have the ball, that's interesting to watch. These great coaches set up their teams. Obviously, Liverpool, another team that's flying right now, and they do it a little bit differently. You can tell, they set up to play in transitions and how they go about their business and how they defend, and it was interesting to be able to watch them a couple times over this break, and it's a little bit different approach. And I think it matters who you are and your identity as a coach, but it also matters the types of players that you bring in and how that will all fit together.
And I'm sure it helped you immensely because obviously it's a different league, but you are a coach of a club where a lot of opponents will sit quite deep against you. Which brings me to my next point, and what City and Liverpool do well, but particularly with City and Stones and Laporte, is that they challenge their centre-backs. It's now a natural consequence that they want to step into that space as well. Yep. And whether you've gone in the past to play with 3 or 2, I think that's what you see your club wanting to continue to do. And the addition of, I believe, Laurent Simon will certainly help with that. Maybe just talk a little bit about that and how you want to see the identity of your club with those centre-backs.
Yeah, I think... obviously, if we're going to be on the ball a fair amount, or if teams are going to be sitting off of us, there's a couple things. How we start attacks and where transitions take place are important. And having center backs that can play the initial pass, or even Laurent and some of the other guys are challenging to develop their ability to hit the ball from one side to the opposite side to keep teams opened up, which then can open up some entry passes. The ability for our center backs to step into the next line in that initial 2 versus 1 or 3 versus 2 to actually step into the next line and create a new numerical advantage in the next line is, I think, really important if you have the ball. Otherwise, if you remain in these even number situations, eventually you're in a tough situation where you could lose the ball in a bad place. So for us, having those guys and having a guy like Laurent whose passing range is phenomenal, but also his comfort level to drive into the next line and create a numerical advantage, it bodes well for us. I think, again, a part of that is he in his moments can be an aggressive defender. He can defend in the open space. But I think a big thing for us, and as we look at last year and moving into this year, is we got hurt a lot in transitions. We lost balls in bad places. We were too opened up behind the ball. We've got to defend better in the process of having the ball, and I think you have to be very aware of how you're defending behind the ball as the ball is still in your possession. And so we've got to get tighter in some of those things, in addition to trying to be a little bit more purposeful at moments when we have the ball. But defensively, we've got to shut down teams better than we did last year. There's no two ways about that. The attacking side, we know we have the ability, we have the players. It's making sure we keep things locked down on the other end.
On that note, Greg, and obviously you've had many hours upon days and months now to think about what you're going to do with the season, a far longer off season than you would have liked, even though it's presented the challenges that we've just presented, the opportunities that we just discussed. What about the midfield in terms of if you have two high caliber strikers in Jozy and Seba to play centrally? Sure. I guess you are a little bit you kind of locked into place only certain shapes, aren't you? But have you thought about adding another deeper midfielder there, whether it be one of your own or something to play alongside Michael in certain aspects? Because last year, very often, he was the lone central midfielder there.
Yeah, a part of that last year was, again, I think we lost a little bit of the balance of our midfield. We were getting too many numbers high too soon, and that wasn't necessarily, it's something that we talked about over the course of last year. I think it's something that we have to do something structurally different this year. But if we can keep two midfielders slightly deeper, which opens up more space actually for Seba and Jozy to move, to be able to find pockets and gaps. I think sometimes in this past season we were getting too many players too high too soon. We were actually closing off the spaces that we wanted to get into. That then in turn leads to transitions, and then you don't have numbers in between where the ball transitions and trying to protect your own goal. So again, there's a lot of these things that are both structural but also just tactically and how we move and where we want guys set up that we will adjust going into this year. And it's interesting because we when you look back at 2017, some of those things happened sort of organically in the way we went about things. And last year, again, I think maybe as a product of us chasing the season a lot, we were a little bit indisciplined in how high we were getting too soon, and we were too goal oriented, and we were conceding goals on the other side. Again, there's not one magic bullet, but there's a few different things that we have to do differently for sure.
And I suppose, look, whenever you lose a player of the caliber of Victor Vazquez, it's a blow. Sure. But I suppose that is one area that maybe presents an opportunity, because Victor was one of those players that would obviously be very high. Does it give you now an opportunity maybe to find a different kind of profile of a player, maybe a player that still has Victor's attacking mindset and his vision, but maybe somebody that can come back a little bit deeper in certain aspects?
Yeah, I think it poses a couple opportunities. We will need to find somebody in midfield. That can be somebody who's a little higher and has a little bit more of the profile of Victor. The other option is to sit somebody a little deeper. That will put Oso in a little bit higher position. I mean, last year he played quite frequently in a high position. He's very drawn and showed good timing last year of getting in the box, and his work rate ahead of the ball has been very good. But we need to make sure that we have that structure behind whoever that player is. And then the second piece of it is I think we need to look at width. We need to have somebody who can give us width on the outside, who is capable of getting into the depth, who can stretch the back line and really make them worry about the space behind them, but can also beat some people on the outside, which makes them worry about their width of the back four. And a lot of that is to open up the space in the middle for Seba and Jozy and those guys. But we've got to force teams to open themselves up a little bit more, and we've got to be able to threaten the width in a better way. And when we can do that and prove that we can do that, then I think spaces up the central part of the field will open up, and more space for Seba will start to show itself.
So that's the answer for Greg Vanney, the coach. We've got to know you very well over the last few years. Stephen and I are here talking to you now, and you've been very generous with your time before and after games with us. And I'd like to our listeners to get a little bit of glimpse in that, in terms of what's Greg Vanney like, the man, when you get that notification? Because as a coach, I'm pretty sure Victor Vazquez was a great player to have for you, and we've already discussed that this week too. What he provided over the 2 years. Is it one of those where you put your phone down and just put your head in your hand a little bit for a little bit? Do you get a little bit angry, stressed? Because I mean, you've been in the game a long time, Greg. It's ups and downs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it is, and as I've said before, Victor is as good a guy as he is a player, and I just enjoyed having Victor around, picking his brain about things, his experiences. I think his experiences were important for other players. He's always, level-headed about the game. He'll do anything that you ask him to do. And he's a phenomenal player. All of us have sat back at some point, and I'm assuming you guys as well, when you're watching the game, and he picks out a pass that I don't know if any of us saw, and he somehow puts the ball in between a space that doesn't even look like there's a space, and it was incredible to have a guy of that ability in this league. Look, he was a steal for us. Let's be honest.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah,
he's a DP player on a non-DP contract, and that's reality. As he got in the league and he got into MLS and started, he knows that. He knows that he was a steal, but he also recognizes he's 32 and he only has so many years left. And those are all earning years for all of us that we're players. You earn as much as you can while you're playing and doing what you want. So these are important final years for him, and so this is an important opportunity for his family. I understand from a player perspective and a personal perspective. I understand. As the coach of the team, I was sad. I got to be honest, because I will miss him as a person to have around our locker room, and for sure we'll miss him as a player. And I don't think, and I think it's fair to say, we won't replace Victor with Victor, given the resources that we've opened up with Victor. He's better than that, and we've got to find the way to make our team better in different ways than saying we're going to go find Victor Vazquez, because it isn't going to happen, and that's the reality.
Frankly, and Stephen and I talked about it earlier on the show, we would say that if we were running a club and a 32-year-old with the profile of Victor, with his injuries, despite the brilliance, that came to us and said, I'm going to get more money here, I think we would have allowed him to go as well. Yeah. But was there ever a discussion here internally where someone said, well, hold on, should we give him the money? Or was that even part of any discussion? Or was it simply, no, this is the right thing to do by us and him?
No, it was, from the start, I think it was the right thing. Look, again, we all around here know that Victor has given us everything that we've asked for in the salary spot and the way the league is structured. We couldn't give him another dime. He's maxed out in in what we call the TAM world, so we couldn't give him more money. It was just a matter of, you understand the player, you respect what the player has done for you, that he's been a good guy, a loyal soldier, and he's done it probably at a fraction of what he could have done it anywhere else in the world, and so you have to respect that on some level, and I think that's part of what makes this club a good club, is we understand those kinds of things, and we could have said no. I don't think it benefits anybody if we do. I think it's the right thing to do by him, and it's the right thing to do by our team and moving forward.
A couple more, and you've been really generous with your time. The Jozy and Seba story seemingly won't go away. You see them as players. You're their coach. I understand that. Mm-hmm. But you have said this week publicly on camera that you would like them to stay beyond their contract. Is that a no-brainer for a coach like you to have players of that ability to want to stay?
Yeah, I think when you're dealing with guys of high quality and you know what these guys are good people. They're good guys in our locker room. You know what it is like to work with them. You know how they fit in your team, and anytime you they move on, then you've got to find new pieces. You've got to find new personalities. You've got to reorganize your team. So, these guys fit with what we're doing, and they've helped us to be successful, and they still have that capability in their legs to keep us successful. So, they're good guys, and they work for the group, and I think that's important. Those are all important facets as you add players into this league. Everybody knows, and Steven's been around the league, that there's no shoe-in when you go and bring guys in, especially on DP contracts. There's no guarantees. There's a lot of factors that go into that, and we've got good guys, and they've been good for this franchise. And so but it has to make sense on a number of levels. Not just me as the coach, right? I can say my piece, but it's things that happen on a number of levels that have to work out.
Last one for you. Obviously, the Champions League is now at the fore. We're getting closer to the CONCACAF Champions League campaign starting. I can say this. I don't expect you to say it, but I've said this to you privately. The press conference between Bill Manning, yourself, and Tim Bezbatchenko at the end of the year, when they were talking about how to go about things differently this year than what they did last year, I found that quite uncomfortable, because what I've said to you personally is that I thought what you did last year for the Champions League, and I'll say this to anybody, was exactly the way you should have done it. And they were almost said, because of what the consequences were after that, in terms of how it didn't go the way that you wanted the league, it almost became the reason for that, and maybe we need to address things differently. And I understand you have made some things differently. You don't want to go to Mexico now for preseason, but I guess my point being is you can't have too many regrets, can you, Greg? After getting all the way to the CONCACAF Champions League final, winning the games that you did, going through three giants of Mexican football, getting to the penalty shootout, outplaying the teams, I just felt that it was a little bit of a Monday morning quarterback scenario at that point that I felt a little bit uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I think, at least from my perspective, we will approach Champions League differently because we learned from our experience last year. So, as an example, our preseason is different than it was last year. I felt like last year we did a fantastic job maybe of preparing ourselves for the short run, which was Champions League. In the process, we didn't get our guys prepared for the long run, which is the durability it takes to go through a whole season, not just a Champions League, which is a couple months, but it's the grueling summers of Major League Soccer. And so we endured a lot of injuries in that initial phase. And part of that, in my opinion, is the preseason that we had prepared us for Champions League, but it didn't get our guys ready for what a real full season looks like. And so we're traveling less. We're going to train more. We're going to get the games in that we need to get games in. We know what Champions League is like now. We know what it's like to play in Mexico. We know, there's the possibility we could play Toluca at altitude. We know what that feels like. We can take those experiences and put them in our back pocket. We don't need to go have those again in preseason. We can now really just focus on our developing our game model and developing our bodies and making sure that we are ready for the grind that is 10 months, 11 months, not just for 3 months. And I think that was part of our learning process. We will still try to win this tournament. That's not going to change. We want to be the first team that wins it. We're going to put everything we can towards that. I think we just have to learn from our experience and make sure that we try to do it better. Better. One penalty kick better, I guess, but in the end, better by keeping guys healthy and durable through that process.
Well, good luck with it. And again, thank you for joining us on the show. You've been always gracious with your time. Enjoy the sunshine in LA, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Thanks, Greg.
That was Greg Vanney, a very insightful chat, a man we know very well, but I thought it was a different kind of interview for some of the listeners to listen to.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, KG. It was great to listen to Greg kind of open up a little bit. Normally we see him quick and sharp after games, but we know he has a bright tactical mind. He thinks about the game. He loves football as much as anybody I've ever met in my life. He just loves talking about all forms of the game. I have kids the same age as Greg, and he's just as passionate about the U12s as he is about the first team. I can promise you that. And he really integrates himself into TFC. So it was great to hear him talk in depth about the kind of things and get into some of his passions and wants for TFC in the future.
Good stuff. Okay, let's go to our last segment. #AskAFP. Back to Sean.
Just for everyone, make sure to use the hashtag AskAFP through Twitter at AFootballPod, and then we'll hopefully be able to answer all your questions. This is TFC specific, but if you have Whitecaps or Impact questions, we will have them coming up in the next couple weeks.
We promise it's coming up soon.
Yes, we can't wait for that.
Can't wait for those.
Stephen asks, can Jonathan Osorio keep up his form from last season after his sports hernia injury? And can he replace Victor Vazquez in the attacking midfield role?
I think it has to be said first that the Stephen is not me, KJ.
No,
so
it's Stephen with a PH. And as the famous joke goes, that doesn't mean Peven. Stephen with a PH. No, it's not you. You're right. Look, I had a good chat with Jonathan this week, and I think there's a different kind of confidence about him that we've seen over the last 12 to 18 months. I think he would be okay with us saying that there's clearly a different level of maturity about him as a person and as a player. I think it would be a lot to ask him personally to replace Victor Vazquez in that attacking role. Maybe it's something that he can do a little bit more in certain areas if whoever they bring in isn't available in those areas. I still think he has got a very good eye for that pass. But it wasn't a coincidence that last year suddenly his goals went up. It was about reading the game and the ability to slow it down a little bit and doing it at the highest level in the CONCACAF Champions League, which gave him tremendous confidence.
Yeah, and I think Victor Vazquez helped a lot with that, KJ, as did a number of other people. But the most important person in this process that developed Jonathan Osorio's game is Jonathan Osorio. He put in the work. I think he was a young lad who came into TFC who was extremely passionate about football, loves the game, was desperate to be a success, and I think sometimes that little bit of anxiety playing in a side that didn't have the same quality as the last seasons or the seasons before, as TFC started to grow and develop, I think meant that he was playing with that little bit of anxiety, and then eventually everything clicked at the same time, and he found a maturity and he found a calmness, and he started to realise what he was all about, and what his strengths and weaknesses are. And I agree with you, he slowed the game down, and I think that came from that inner belief in himself. And I thought he had a brilliant season. He was wonderful. He timed his runs. He played the game the Jonathan Osorio way. He wasn't quite as slow on the ball. I think at times he was thinking too much about the game, and he was taking too many touches, and he was allowing the picture that he had seen to go away. And I thought that last season, when he saw the picture and he saw the pass, he played it really quickly. He had a positivity to his game where he stepped into things rather than maybe that little pirouette turn and coming back out and playing it a bit too simple, and his game went from strength to strength. Difficult to ask him to be Vazquez. I don't think he's that kind of player, but he's Jonathan Osorio. He has great quality, and he's going to be a leader of this team moving forward.
Under the Kosh asks, will TFC see out the January window without an offer from Europe for Alex Bono?
Yeah, they will. But I do think that obviously Alex is on the radar, and there's a lot of people who are keeping an eye on him in Europe. Zach Steffen's got his move, which is an enormous move and a great accomplishment to him. And Alex Bono would have told you, and I think a few evaluators within the league have told me over the last few months, that it wasn't that long ago where they saw them very close.
Yeah.
And obviously Alex would admit that he didn't have this season that he wanted last season, particularly in the second half. And he'll take that as motivation. What we do know about Alex is that he'll certainly evaluate. I like Alex because he evaluates his abilities and his own mistakes as honest as anybody, and that can only help him.
This is the biggest season in Alex Bono's career. You're right in saying that Steffen and Bono were neck and neck the start of last year. Bono had a brilliant 2017. Steffen was very, very good also. And they were at that point, who's going to be the next US goalkeeper? Who's going to take it forward? Steffen had a great year. Alex didn't. That happens in football. Now it's up to Alex Bono to come back stronger, show that he has more to his game, he has more belief, he has more ability to take parts of his game that he's good at onto the next level. I think he needs to do that as well, KJ, and to let everyone know that 2018 was a blip in his career. And I think it will make or break him. We'll see a goalkeeper that is really on the radar of European clubs, or we'll see a guy who's always going to be in MLS. And no disrespect to that, and I think that Alex Bono is a keeper that's already established himself as an out-and-out MLS goalkeeper, but can he really fight Stefan Close? Stefan's not going to get a lot of games at Manchester City. No. Is he going to go on loan? Who knows? Let's see what happens. Yeah. But if I'm Alex Bono, I'm looking at that now, KJ, and going, okay, this is an opportunity for me, especially in my own backyard, to show my new head coach and to people all around me that I'm capable of wearing that shirt for the national team, and to obviously be establishing myself completely in at TFC, winning more trophies for TFC. So I think this is a pivotal year in his career. The character that we know he is, we know that he'll take that on, and he'll really relish that opportunity.
David DeCola asks, with the departure of Vazquez, is there any way TFC can bring in Atiba Hutchinson, and can he fit in any which way?
Well, obviously they've got allocation money to spend. Do I think they'll give it to someone like Atiba Hutchinson? I'll be extremely surprised if they do. And at the end of the day, he goes on to ask, doesn't he, in the question, could Bradley and Atiba sit deeper in midfield together? I do think that, and we talked about that with Greg Vanney, I do think that TFC are going to have to establish that a little bit more of that double pivot this season. As Greg said, far too often there was far too many players beyond the ball when they would lose them in transition. I just think that the money will be spent more of an attacking player, as much as I'd love to see Atiba back in Canada.
I'd love to see Atiba back to KJ, but I don't see him coming back to Canadian football or to MLS, and I certainly don't see him at TFC. So I'd be absolutely shocked if that happened. I think Atiba will probably finish his career in Europe.
And last question to finish up, Ask AFP. William Jameson asks, does the Vazquez departure open the door for Lucas Hansen's return, or does the club go in another direction with the increased payroll flexibility?
Possibly both. I mean, I think Hansen was on the radar even before the Vazquez news broke, and what we know this week is that the Vazquez stuff broke pretty quickly. It wasn't something that they knew too much about, even though they did admit that Bezbatchenko in the final days of his tenure was aware of some kind of offer. But Greg Vanney has said that he hasn't ruled out Lucas Hansen. He seems like he wants him back. I'll say this, I saw very little from him last season that would warrant him coming back. That's my own personal evaluation of him. I'm not quite sure what his strengths are, whether he's a player that can get outside a little bit. It's clear they need to bring more width and get that playmaker out wide a little bit more to stretch the field and make it a little bit more predictable. But I didn't see enough from him to really say that I would want him back if I was a TFC fan. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't bring him back if I was Toronto FC. I think that he was decent in his spell for TFC. He had a nice start, and then he kind of lost his way a little bit, and then maybe a little bit of a decent end. But I don't think there's enough there in his game to really see value for TFC, KJ. I'm with you. I just think that he maybe blocks a pathway for some other guys that you have at your football club. I don't know if he's a winger or if he's a forward, and I don't see any real outstanding quality in his play. So if it was me and I was TFC, I'd go in a different direction and I'd try and bring in someone with real quality who can change that 11.
Good stuff. Well, that's it for today's show. Shawnee, thanks for the questions, and thanks everybody else for sending them in. A reminder, #AskAFP. That is the end of our second episode, pals. It's been a good one again, and a reminder, in about 8 days' time, we'll be back. I think around the Tuesday, the 29th of January, there'll be a big Premier League schedule. That day we'll be evaluating on that, some of the FA Cup games, some of the other stories as well will continue to hit the headlines. So thanks for Stevie.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you to Sean. Thanks to Dylan and Clay.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon.